everybody, and welcome to another episode of Junk Food and You. This is the podcast where I just sort of talk about random candy ideas, questions, or just things that are on my mind. Today we're going to answer a question, or I'm going to talk about a question at least. I don't always answer questions. I sometimes just talk about the question and then there is really no answer. But today we're going to talk about, is red licorice licorice? This is a tough one. I've talked about other sort of candies like this before, like whether or not something is actually licorice or whether white chocolate is chocolate and that sort of thing. But whether red licorice is a complicated thing. There are generally three categories in food for labeling things. There's sort of the cultural definition, there's the scientific definition, and then there's the legal definition. So we'll start with the cultural definition, and I think this might be one of the few arguments, maybe the legal one too, where I would say that red licorice is licorice. And that's because culturally we put it on the package. You would not sort of, if you went into a candy store and it said red licorice, you would not be sort of like, well, that's weird. You'd be like, well, I might not agree with that, but it's not weird. It's sort of a common thing that happens. It may be down the road we change our minds and collectively candy stores and candy companies stop putting the word licorice with red. Maybe that's okay. There were a few companies, like even I think like nowadays you'll see like Twizzlers will put twists, or Red Vines has, they call them vines. Like they have different names for them. So I think this is sort of being culturally pushed out, where red sort of chewy long candies, whether they're and generally twisted and generally in a very similar shape and texture as black licorice sort of ropes, they are sort of changing the name of them a little bit. So I think that culturally, we did definitely call this red licorice at some point, but I think that's changing because I think people are sort of thinking to themselves, maybe red licorice isn't licorice. Then we get to scientifically, is it licorice? This is sort of, this is where we can actually look at what licorice is. Licorice it's from a root. It's a very sort of strong, it's sort of an herby thing. It's been around forever. I believe like ancient Egyptians or Mayans, I don't remember where it actually came from. You can look that up. I'll put it there, whether it's Mayan or Egyptian or maybe both. But sort of ancient cultures would use it in medicine all the time. So it's an extract from a root. I've actually eaten licorice root. It's very licoricey. Why is bubblegum pink? How old is ice cream? Where does the word lollipop come from? Join Sir Francis Sweetums and his companion Barbara as they learn fun facts about the history of many fun snacks. Learn all about the snacks you love by picking up Snack Facts, available on Amazon or at candycritic.org. As you may or may not know, I'm not a huge fan of black licorice, but it's an interesting thing to try. Even if you're not a fan, it's an interesting thing to sort of chew on a root and it tastes like black licorice, because it is. So scientifically, I don't think red licorice is licorice, because licorice is another thing. It's a completely different sort of, there's no black licorice extract in red licorice. It's just a candy that happens to be the same shape and texture that was often sold in similar places and in similar ways. But really it isn't, I don't know the history of licorice in that respect. Maybe I should do another episode of, write another issue of Snack Facts and do licorice, and I can learn a little bit more about it. But I feel like black licorice came out, and it's a very sort of polarizing flavor, and I think that not everybody likes black licorice. And so what happened is maybe these companies thought, well, we could broaden our thing if we gave different flavors instead of the licorice flavor, the sort of astringent, acidic black licorice flavor. If we did fruity flavors, maybe people would get it, and that's where red licorice came from. And red licorice is often strawberry, raspberry, or generally just fruit. It's weird because I've often seen just red licorice, and I'm like, what flavor is red? I've had a whole other thought in my brain written about what flavor is red. So it's scientifically, I think I would have a harder time arguing that red licorice is licorice, because there is no licorice in it at all. It's just a candy that's similar to it. Now, the one where I would say probably the best argument for red licorice being licorice is commercially. I feel like if you went to a store and there was a licorice section, sort of the legal and commercial side of this, if you went to a store and it said, licorice, and there was a big sign about it that said licorice, and they had red and black licorice sold, I don't think a store would get sued for misrepresenting it. I could be wrong, and maybe things are changing. Maybe that's why the candy companies changed the names in a lot of cases. But I just feel like legally you would have a hard court battle saying, this is not licorice. This is something different, and I'm suing you because you misrepresented this thing as being licorice. So I think legally at this point, although I think with more and more candy companies changing it, they're either doing that because they're worried about or have had legal problems, or they're just sort of separating that. I don't really know. I'm not a lawyer. I've just seen a lot of things, and like I said, if I went to a store and they said licorice and there was red licorice there, I wouldn't be like totally upset at that. Like I wouldn't go, well, that's like, I actually used this reference before when I was talking about milk and white chocolate and dark chocolate. If you saw milk, white and dark chocolate, you would, in a candy counter that said chocolate, you would not sort of be shocked by it. If you saw a pickle in there, you would be shocked by that. So if you went to a candy section and you saw a sign that said licorice and there was a jar of pickles, you'd be like, well, that's not licorice for sure. But if you saw red licorice, you wouldn't. You may have your feelings about this, but you wouldn't sort of go to the manager and threaten to sue the store. It isn't worth legal action, and it sort of may have some connection. But again, that can change, and I believe this is one of those things that is changing, because I am noticing candy companies getting rid of the word red licorice. It's now turning into more like twists and vines and things like that. So it's an interesting thing to think about. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Is red licorice licorice? Do you like black licorice? Do you like red licorice? Which one do you like more? Let me know in the comments and we can chat about it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching. And if you want to follow me on social media, you can go to candycritic.org to find links to everything from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. You can also read well over 1,000 candy reviews, with new ones coming all the time. Candycritic.org also has links to pick up my latest books, as well as some cool candy-themed merchandise.